Good evening. Welcome to Brewgooders episode, whatever number you want to insert here. I think it's 79, actually. Big show today. You notice that Colin's not with me right now. It's because the internet's not been amazing where we are. So just trying to keep on top of that. Spiggy, tonight we're really glad to have on the Brewgooders podcast. This is Dave McKean. So I obviously, when we do bits for our guests joining us, I always try and spend a wee bit of time trying to sculpt a nice little introduction. And when it comes to Dave, where to begin is I don't know. It's indescribable how much this guy has done for the comics industry and for other industries as well, obviously. So I'm going to speak to him a wee bit later on about this, but I think depending on your age, it has quite a distinct impact on how you may have accessed Dave's work. I know a lot of our friends in like the 77 and Andrew, our Iron Comics guru that joins us every week. They know him from his Hellblazer covers for DC, or they'll know him from doing his work with Neil Gaiman in the Sandman. Obviously, so many people will know him because of his illustrations for Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. But I think my personal first exploration and discovery of Dave was when I was at uni, and I was going out with a girl who worked in a video shop, and so she used to bring loads and loads of different tapes and DVDs back for us to watch, and she brought Mirror Mask, and I had no idea what I was watching. She bought me in because the guy that played Crichton from Red Dwarf is in it. So I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Let's give it a go. And was blown away by the imagery, as I think everybody that has seen Mirror Mask. Obviously, we've been speaking to folk all week about having Dave McKean on the show, and so many people that I've spoke to have been like, oh, Mirror Mask is great. So it's quite incredible, and then I imagine as we'll go into discussion, he's done loads of work for like he's done work with Heston Blumenthal, he's done work with Richard Dawkins, he's done work with Tori Amos and all these other incredible musical artists. So yeah, I'm going to bring him in without further ado. We've got the legend that is Dave McKean joining us this evening. If the internet's still working, good evening, Dave.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm sorry, the internet's really flaky, so your picture is coming and going, and the sound is more like a sort of Dalek, but we'll have a go.
It's a shame because you're coming across brilliant. What I'll do is I'll type questions up on the screen if I need to, because we can all hear you perfect. My first question for you, I was going to ask so when I invited you on, you told us that you were more of a wine drinker, but to get the beer aspect of the podcast out of the way,
yes,
you're drinking beer this evening, aren't you? What
I am. I thought I'd enter into the spirit. I've got this Curious Brew, nice little logo, local place in Ashford, just down the road from me. I thought I'd try this. I could do with a drink, so I'm going to open it on air.
Oh, amazing!
I have a suitably curious vessel to drink out of. Where are we? Yeah. So we'll see.
Excellent.
Let's hope it's all right.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yes. Good. It's good.
That's really good. I'll need to get a list, a link to the brewery. It's always nice to just find out what's one of the good things about the podcast is how localized a lot of the beer is, and like when we get guests on. Yeah. We've had guests come in and join us from like San Francisco who are drinking whatever the local ale is there. It's just really, really good. It's really interesting just to see what is available in different areas. Ask you a question and just let you run with it a wee bit. How did so for those that like myself, how did you get started? My understanding is in my vision of you and opinion of you, you're one of the pioneers in British comics. So where did you get started?
Where did I get started professionally?
No, can you take us right back? Where did you study art? Yeah.
I went to what was my local art school. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw comic books, and I just wanted to be left alone to do that. And I had some fantastic teachers there who basically spent the first year just arguing with me and trying to get me to look up into the world. And once I did that and started to get into a world of art and films and everything else, creativity, I never looked back really. And I had a fantastic design teacher who gave me professional work while I was at the college. So I'd go to the art school during the day and then go to the studio in the evenings and work professionally on briefs. I had a great drawing teacher who also taught semiotics. So he was a big Hitchcock fan, and he would show us films, and we talk through the symbols and signs of everything. So everything has a meaning. It's important to be aware of what those signs and messages are. So I had a really good bunch. And so 2 years went by, and I could have gone on to St. Martin's or somewhere like that, and I looked at it, but I was having such a good time and getting so much from being at this place with these teachers, so I stayed there for another 2 years.
Right. During your time there, did you I was chatting with Colin about this earlier. When did you start to develop your style? When did and when did you start to become noticed for that, do you think?
Well, it was definitely at art school. I went with I went to art school loving the surface of things, and everything had to be very realistic and accurate. And that lasted for a good year or two. But then they just opened my eyes to so much more. That's such a narrow target, and there's so many more ways of drawing and creating and expressing yourself. And as soon as I found a couple of people who kind of opened the door into expressionism, and they would be people like Ralph Steadman, British illustrator, and Francis Bacon, British painter, and Jim Dine, who's an American painter, printmaker. So it was just a few people whose work really got to me, really got under my skin. And as soon as I started to see that sort of stuff, then the doors opened, and there's a world of things to explore. So I started doing a lot of collage work in art school and drawing in a much more kind of expressive way. And that's the stuff that I took into comics. And I felt that, a lot of comics are drawn in a very specific way. And there's really no reason why comics need to look anyway. And I thought there was a world of possibilities out there that comics could really benefit from. So that was the plan.
I was going to ask you about you. So I was going to ask you about your inspirations and stuff like that, because I'm holding, like, just off camera your Arkham Asylum work, which it's unlike visually, it's unlike any comic I think many people at the time would have ever read, and I think it's just one of the most distinct, in my personal opinion, one of the most distinctive books I think out there. How did that come about? How did did you go into comics with that collage? That idea that you were going to use this sort of collage view within your style?
Well, before that I did a book called Violent Cases with Neil, and then we did a series called Black Orchid, and then I did Arkham. But I was looking at a world of illustration and a world of design, and same with the covers for Hellblazer and Sandman. I was looking at album covers and novel covers, and I thought that there's a big audience out there who I think if they were spoken to in a language that they recognised from, 4AD album covers or Picador books or, one of these other things, they would respond and they'd pick up a comic. So I didn't see any reason to do the same as all the other comics that were going. The stories I wanted to tell were stranger. Certainly the Arkham story is a strange, dreamlike story. It should be told in a strange, elusive, dreamlike way. And so I tried to find the right style for the story. I was trying to find the right style for each story, and Arkham is a very dreamlike, strange, expressionistic story. It seemed to need a visual look that would be appropriate for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's absolutely I think that's absolutely accomplished within the work. So yeah, how did your partnership with Neil Gaiman come around? How is that? That's obviously I think that's where a lot of folk would know you, and obviously you've got a long I think quite a long professional career with Neil Gaiman. How did that come around, and how does that partnership work? Because it does feel very much like a really strong partnership between the two of you.
It lasted a particular duration. We were both working on a magazine in London that never happened. We liked each other's work. He'd written a story called Violent Cases in a writer's workshop. I thought it could make an interesting book. I was asked to do something for Escape, Paul Gravet's Escape, and I thought maybe that could be that. And then Neil got us an interview at DC, and he frantically pitched away at various characters that I'd never heard of while I showed Dick Giordano my work. And we walked out of that with a commission, and then Karen asked me to do the Hellblazer covers, so we were off. And then, since then, we the Sandman was the main thing. That was a long-running, 10-year commitment. And then in the middle of that, we did Mr. Punch, which I'm very pleased with, and Signal to Noise, which I kind of feel we didn't do justice to. And then some children's books, of which Wolves in the Walls I'm very happy with. And then ending really with Mirror Mask, which was a bit of a tortuous ordeal. And we haven't really done anything together since. I've been doing my own stories and working with other people. I've done the odd job, but that's not really the same as collaborating.
So if we move fast forward, how did of all the people that we've had on our podcast, and just I think and most people in the comics profession, I don't really know anybody that's had a career like yours. How did you find reading up on you and reading your personal bios and stuff like that? You've done work for like PlayStation and things like that. How did that kind of aspect of your career start to come? Like,
yes, I did the image that launched PlayStation in the UK. Yeah,
that's absolutely nuts. So how did that kind of work come about? How did them?
I did like a lot of things. I just get a call from either an ad agency or a design company or a band or a musician, if it's an album cover or record label, with a gig. And sometimes it's really involved, and I end up doing years worth of work. Sometimes it's just a one-off. They're all different and mostly fun.
I can imagine. And then how did the as I said before, I discovered your work. I discovered your work through seeing Mirror Mask when I think I was at uni. Okay. And a young girl. How did that sort of transition into things like directing? Being directing, I don't even think that's the word. How did becoming a film director kind of come around?
I've always loved film. I did make some films in art school with their 16mm camera. I didn't really want a career as a director, as a hired gun. I just wanted to get the opportunity to try making a film, and try making a film that felt like my illustration, not just another film like a live-action film that anybody else could have made. So I decided nobody's just going to give me money to make a film, so I better make something. So I made 2 short films, and I found a producer and a DP and an animator, and that little team made 2 short films, and I put them into festivals, and they won some awards, and they were seen by Lisa Henson, who's Jim Henson's daughter. And she had opportunities to make a feature film, or pitch, I should say, pitch for a feature film, a sort of fantasy film, a bit like Labyrinth, which Jim. So Neil and I got together to spend a couple of weeks trying to come up with something, and we wrote a script really quickly in 2 weeks, expecting it really to be just a first base that we could give them an idea of what we'd done, and they could say, okay, it's interesting, it's got some good ideas in it, go away for a few months and rewrite it and develop it properly. But actually, they just took the script and said, great, here's a check, and make a film. That never happens. That never happens in Hollywood. Yeah. But it did. And so I ended up, not wanting to jinx it. We ended up going into making the film, honestly, with a script that needed more work, and I thought we could probably fix it en route. And I now know better. But, you live and learn. So I got some wonderful experiences out of it. I love working with the actors, and the animators did a great job. And there are bits of it I'm still very happy with.
There's it's been a number of years since I watched it. I tried to find it on some sort of on Netflix and things like that this week. I didn't have much luck, but I remember, as I say, about my big fan of Red Dwarf, and my girlfriend at the time sold me on the fact that you had a Robert Llewellyn Creighton from it as a. I always remember there's a scene where am I right? Do I remember this correctly? He's the dog, isn't he? And he's like it's just an amazing little scene where there's like riddles going back and forth. Very reminiscent of Labyrinth. I was just gonna say we had a couple of great days getting in, really wonderful people for about 20 minutes. Stephen Fry came along, and he was literally 20 minutes, and he did the librarian character immediate, bang, got it immediately, one take, done, and he was lovely. Robert Llewellyn was a good laugh, just wanted to hang around, so we had him for longer. And we had Lenny Henry in. We had a few interesting people show up to do voices and bits and bobs for us. That's really awesome.
That was a good. Stay still on the constructions he created for Sandman cover photographs, placing that were made pre-Photoshop. Thank you, Craig. The only one that I kept was number 3. I kept number 3. Which is not a picture of Sandman, it's a picture of John Constantine. But for some reason, that was the one of the first 8 that had the big constructions on them that I really liked. So I kept that one, and the others I've sold over the years. I think Kevin Eastman bought a bunch of them for his museum, and then the museum collapsed. So I think they're out in the world somewhere. I don't know if all the little bits and bobs stayed on the covers, but who knows? But they were huge. They were about 4 or 5 foot tall. And yes, I was very grateful for Photoshop, because then I didn't have to make these ludicrous things anymore. I could just do them in Photoshop. Did they study illustration or fine art at uni? Well, I was on I guess I was on a graphic design course. My family had no background in this, so I had nobody to talk to about it. I didn't really know where to go. I didn't know if I should be on a fine art course or an applied arts course. My local art school basically ran a really good foundation. So I did figure drawing and more theoretical stuff. We went outside and did landscape drawing, but we also did graphic design, printmaking, photography, filmmaking, audiovisuals, you know, semiotics. We did a real wonderful range of things. And out of that, I think I decided I was more interested in the applied arts. I was interested in books. I was interested in films, rather than life as a gallery artist. And the fine art scene in the 80s was going in a very strange direction with much more conceptual work, some of which I loved, but a lot of which I thought was a con. And so, and certainly the things that I really valued, drawing and painting and expressing something through hand-eye coordination and your imagination, was not really fashionable. It wasn't really part of the conversation in the art world at the time. So I thought I should probably stick with the applied arts. Andy again, does he have any fond memories of the science strip illustration? I certainly do. Yeah, that was wonderful. It made you feel like you were part of a movement. So the Society of Strip Illustrators was in London, and we would meet, I think it was once a month, and I would drive in. I was living west of London, and Neil would often be there as well, but lots of other people I remember being there. Mark Buckingham was often there, Disraeli, Guy Lawley, who else was there? Lots of people. And then we had odd people would just show up. So I remember Bill Sienkiewicz was in town. He came down and talked to us. I remember doing a very strange talk there. But it was nice just to be amongst people who were in a similar position, just starting out on your career and swapping stories. David Lloyd, of course, was always around. He was a great help, very enthusiastic. I remember the guy who did Yummy Fur was there. What was his name? Brown, Chester Brown. Chester Brown was there. Isn't that weird? What was he doing there? Yeah, it was great. I really loved it. It was so good to find something like that at the start of my career, and feel like you were part of something. How was Rob Price? How was it to work with Richard Dawkins? I've got your back. Well, I remain a huge admirer of Dawkins and his books particularly, and he was. I'd noticed in a few interviews that he said he fancied doing a book for children, a sort of introduction to critical thinking, and it sounded like a wonderful idea, but it never seemed to appear. So I got in touch with my agent to find out who we needed to talk to get my name on the table, if he was still planning on it, to do illustrations for it. And it turned out to be a chap called John Brockman, who's the star agent of all of the science writers. And he also turned out to be a friend of John Cale's, who I knew, and he worked for Andy Warhol in the 60s. Great lover of art and illustrated books. So he put my name on the table. Richard's assistant knew my work, so that was good. So I went down to talk to him. And in the end, he didn't really have a strong idea. He had a few little notes for things. But one of them struck me as a really good structure, which was to ask a series of questions and then answer them initially with our old stories, our theological stories and myths and legends and fables. And then the second part of each chapter would be our very best scientific explanation. And that seemed to be a lovely thing to do. It lent itself to illustration. So we were off, and I absolutely loved working with him. He's completely unlike anybody I've ever known. He's a scientist, obviously. He's a evolutionary biologist. So that's his entire world. He lives quite an aesthetic life. He admitted he has no interest in art particularly, or sense of taste. He lives an academic life. But I found him really lovely. He has a wonderful sense of humour. He's the most polite man you will ever meet, despite his firebrand reputation. and we got on really well. About halfway through, he slightly got cold feet and slightly got a little worried about, because he just didn't know that audience at all. He just wasn't sure he was doing the right thing. He wasn't sure whether maybe the illustrations were overshadowing, or I don't know. He just slightly got cold feet about halfway through. But, you know, we managed to talk him off the roof. And the following chapters, I just kept in mind that he was, you know, a little alarmed by some of my more experimental layouts and things like that. So we calmed it down a bit. But no, he was wonderful. I loved working on the book with him. The publisher was tricky. I didn't really feel that they understood it. And I had some problems with the publisher. But Richard himself was just a delight. Really wonderful. Anyway, Andrew McGee, thank you for the question. How did they come to do a collaboration with Heston Blumenthal? So Heston and I were both published by Bloomsbury Press. Heston was looking to do his first major cookbook, which was the Fat Duck Cookbook. And he loves Alice in Wonderland. That's his favourite book. So he wanted it to have a little bit of Alice in Wonder to it. So the editors at Bloomsbury showed him lots of children's books, obviously lots that they published, hoping that they would pick one of their illustrators. And he liked my book. He liked Wolves in the Walls, particularly. So I went to meet him and just immediately got on with him. And I took a few samples of kind of things that maybe we could do, because a cookbook is an odd thing to work on, because the most important things are not there. You can't taste anything, you can't smell anything. There's a few pictures of the food, but it's not the same as actually seeing it or touching it. So I thought the illustrations maybe could fill in some of those sensual gaps, and explain some of the conceptual thinking behind the dishes. And we immediately connected. And that's why we're still working together. I'm regularly Zooming him through lockdown. He's in France. He's working on a couple of new ideas. One of them sounds really great. I think if we can get that going, it's going to be wonderful. And of course, he's having troubles with the restaurants, keeping staff together, and all of the problems that the catering industry is hit with. So hopefully we can come out of that and relaunch the Duck once lockdown starts to ease.
Oh goodness,
but
let's hope so.
I love working with him. He is
Alice in Wonderland, and his very scientific, technical approach to cooking.
Yes, well, he is both the sort of scientific perfectionist and also a little kid in a playroom, just having fun. And in fact, the last thing I did for him, which I just sent off, was a little mock-up, like a prop notebook in the style of Leonardo da Vinci, but one of his dishes, which is the Mad Hatter's Tea Party dish that they serve in the Duck. And that's going to the Victoria and Albert Museum for the Alice in Wonderland show. So Heston has a little place there because he's so inspired by Alice, and this book is going to be featured in it.
That's fantastic. One question that we got in earlier was, you've worked across art, theatre, films, books, comics. Do you have a preference? Is there something that you really love working in?
No, I suppose I have a basic soft spot for simply drawing, and I'm probably happiest with a blank piece of paper and a pencil and just drawing something. That's really wonderful. But I get so much out of everything else. All of these different things talk to each other. That I learn from one thing and use those lessons in another thing. So it's wonderful to be able to do them all. And my favorite is usually the next thing, the next thing to learn. So I keep on looking out for new challenges, really.
Given that we're a comics kind of podcast, I'm sure we've got a lot of people here that are maybe aspiring artists. I wonder if you've got any kind of tips for them, or artists that you'd recommend that they go and look at to kind of get some inspiration.
Well, that's a really difficult question. I mean, if they're thinking of, if they're at school, for example, and they're thinking of whether they should go to art school, my advice is always yes. There are no guarantees. Prioritize your own work. Make sure you do prioritize your own work, and not just get sucked into doing commercial work for other people. And just have fun, play. If you're having fun, it shows on the page.
That's good to know. I teach design at college, and it's always good to have experts and industry people coming in and joining us and kind of giving us the benefit of their experience. So thanks for those tips, Dave.
Yeah.
So there's a little cheeky question coming from Craig Payton there. That there's the upcoming Sandman Netflix show, and he's wondering if you're involved in it.
Yeah.
If you're allowed to tell us.
No, it's nothing to do with me.
Oh, that's such a shame. We were all hoping for some Dave McKean aesthetics throughout that show. I'm sure they will. I'm sure there'll be a nod in there at the very least.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. I know the only thing I heard was that they've been hit with delays in their shooting because of the COVID thing. But I have heard nothing about it, I'm afraid.
That's a shame. Heather Brennan's in with a question there. Is there any current comic artists that you admire?
There are many. I'm doing a book at the moment with a guy called Jorge Gonzalez, a wonderful Spanish comics artist, illustrator, and painter. And we're doing a conversation book. So I do a piece and send it to him, and then he does a reply and sends it back to me, and I carry on. I've always wanted to do a book like that since I found a book called The Conversation, which is by Milton Glaser and Jean-Michel Follon. And I've kept talking to various people about doing it, but nothing happened. And then I mentioned it to Jorge, and he immediately sent me his first piece. So we're off doing that. I think everybody knows by now that I really love an Italian artist called Lorenzo Mattotti. And I think if anybody wants to learn about drawing, illustration, comics, you can do no better than going to him. There are so many. I really love Munoz and Breccia, and I like Sean Tan's books. I mean, there's a lot.
You mentioned working with a Spanish artist. Now, I bizarrely saw something on Spanish news about you having an exhibition in the Canary Islands, and my Spanish isn't good.
Yeah.
But it was something about horror. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's not really about horror. It's about silent films. I've got a long-running project called Nitrate because I really love the silent era filmmaking. And I've been making drawings and paintings inspired by those images for the last 10 years. And they've been in a few different shows, but I have a new show. It's just over, but it was in Gallery Artisar in Tenerife. And it was beautiful. It's a wonderful gallery. It's perfect for this. They had some drawings and paintings, new drawings and paintings. And I'm hoping to finish that project this year and finally produce what will be a large book of all of these images.
Do you think any of those artwork will travel? Will we be taking them anywhere else?
I think they are arranging more shows in Spain. I think there's a museum in Spain that's wants to put on a show. I would like to have a show here to launch the book. I keep on meaning to talk to either the Silent Film Museum in London or the National Film Theatre or somewhere like that. So I'd like to have a show here, and the project is sort of coming to an end now. So I think it will probably take one more good exhibition.
I've only got a couple of more questions have come in from the viewers, so I'm going to kind of wrap up with those questions. There's just one question, and it's a bizarre one. Somebody's asking about your mug, which looks very bespoke. And we'd like to know if you've ever designed a mug, and if that one might be your own design.
No, I didn't design this one. I bought this from a little gallery in Copenhagen. I was there last year. I had an exhibition and did some talks in Denmark, and found this amazing little gallery. And I had to bring Spiny Norman home with me. So it's my favourite mug at the moment. I haven't designed cups. You see, that's a new challenge. I'd really like to do that.
Well,
so I'll look out for somebody who wants to commission some interesting kitchenware.
Yeah, maybe some nice beer steins would be nice. About your social media accounts, where can people connect with you online? What's your Twitter handle? Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a website that people can come and see your work?
Where can listeners connect with me online? Well, you know, I'm not big on social media. I was quite keen on Twitter when it started, but it's since it became a sort of broiling cauldron of hate, I've left. My page is still there, and somebody what I do is I write one line and create an image, and a colleague of mine posts stuff up. I look in on Twitter maybe once every 4 months, something like that, 3-4 months, just to see if there's a question that needs answering. Probably the best place is there's a Art of Dave McKean sort of fan page, is what it is, on Facebook, and that's been wonderful. That's what Twitter used to be for me, a place where people could just ask me a quick question, and there've been all kinds of things, from people asking if the drawing that they bought that looks like one of mine is by me, and I could just say, yeah, I remember doing that, or no, you bought a dud, or you know, they've heard of a book and they can't find it and wondered if I had spare copies. I mean, I've had all kinds of questions, and if it's something like that I can just answer really quickly, I look in, maybe not every day, but there's a professional email contact on my website. I do have a website if you want to look at my work, or you know, there's some interviews on there for information and a biography and stuff like that, some film clips. So that's davemckean.com, and there is a sort of business email. So if there's a publisher who wants to get in contact with me, my agent's email is there, and my business email is there. But that's about it, really. That's about it.
Well, that's great. Dave, thank you so much for agreeing to come and speak to us. Certainly we've had a lot of people watching tonight, and I'm sure the recording will be popular as well. Obviously the internet gremlins have been against us a little bit, but all remains to be said is thanks so much for joining us, and it's been a real inspiration and a pleasure to have you here. And right on cue, the internet gremlins come along and mess things up. So thank you so much, Dave, for agreeing to come in on the show.
Okay. All right.
It's been a pleasure. And thanks
Cheers.
for
I've enjoyed my
answering
beer today. Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your beer.